Welcome back to Endurance Icons and hello to episode 20. We're going to do something a little bit different this time. When we first started the podcast, we jumped right in with our guests. And one of the common questions we got was, why did you not talk about yourselves? Well, we somehow think that the endurance icons are a lot more interesting than us. But we have reached a point where there's a lot of listeners that have never met us before. So we thought it was time to celebrate our 20th episode, to spend some time giving a little bit of background of who we are, some of the things that we're training for. We're going to do a bit of a retrospective of some of our absolute favorite highlights from the past while of the podcast, and dive into some common themes that we've seen in the podcast and also some news that we're seeing. So lots to cover today. So we're going to get started. We always say this is Jessica and Mark Cullen. So we are a husband and wife duo. Mark is the head coach of a triathlon club called LP Endurance. I am the head of communications at a company, and I am also one of his athletes. So we decided that, you put these two things together and it's the perfect opportunity to start a podcast. Is there anything else you want to say, Mark, to that?
No.
You don't want to talk more about yourself?
Just wanted to be clear. We met and were friends and then dating before I started coaching you. I wasn't already coaching you. So
yes,
just
sure.
Clear the air on that.
Okay. To be clear, and I'll underscore this, Mark does not make a habit of dating his athletes. We did. Yes, you started. We got into a relationship before you started coaching me. Super fun. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about how we started the podcast. So it was always on our radar that we wanted to do a podcast. It's something that's fun. To be honest, this is a really cool way for us to spend some time together. We love meeting our icons and love sharing that with everyone who listens to the podcast. So last summer, I was on a podcast and Mark was with me as his coach, as my coach. And we had a listener say, why don't you start a podcast? And we sort of had a question like, why don't we? So that was all it took. And we've been having an absolute blast with this ever since.
Yeah, we've got to meet so many amazing people. Man, it's been so fun. Like looking back on it, I can't believe the amazing guests we've been able to get right off the hop and through 20 episodes. They just keep on rolling through, and man, I feel like I'm learning so much too at the same time.
So who have been some of your favorite guests?
Oh man, I feel like we could shoot through almost the whole list here. What a start we had to the podcast, two of Canada's best athletes from running and triathlon right away with Jackson and Natasha. Right away, I couldn't believe we got those two. So it was so exciting, and such what I'm finding, everybody's so humble and such nice people. Sometimes there's this persona you think a pro athlete's going to be this stuck up person. We've met so many amazing people that are just regular people who are working hard and have figured out the puzzle to get to the top level of sport. So
I
cool.
think one of my favorite things too is that the things that I learn in those conversations, I actually take directly to my training.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I love that Natasha Wodak said in her piece was that, everyone has something. We always think that the top endurance icons, they are these perfect bulletproof athletes that aren't dealing with any niggles. She deals with, I think it's arthritis every single day. So I take a lot of solace from that, I guess, as I'm training and I have my, sometimes I have some sciatic pain or, a little niggle in my ankle. And it's, if Tasha is setting marathon records with arthritis, we have no excuses.
Yeah. And our guests have done some pretty epic things since they've been on our podcast too. During the last little while, look at, I think Ben last weekend, just in Boston, Ben Flanagan set Canadian 5K record.
Yeah. And Allison, she won Paris-Roubaix, which if you listen to that podcast, she actually stated when we asked what is next for you, she said that was top of the list, which was super exciting to see her get that goal.
Yeah, that was so cool to watch. What an epic finish, and did her signature dance at the end of it too, the TikTok sensation.
I know. And then Tamra, she won Oceanside, bless you. That was pretty cool. Had her signature killer run off the end, but also I think what the headline, she joked in that the interview that she had with us is that people are not always lauding her as the greatest swimmer, but she had a heck of a swim.
And bike too. Like
know.
she has made huge gains on that. Like she was out, sure there was Holly who swam in front of them, but she was pretty much main pack and then stuck with them on the bike. And like who's throwing down with her on the run other than maybe like an Anne Haug, but like, yeah, that was huge. Like that, I think this sets her up for like a massive year to come.
I know. And Ben Popjoy, if you haven't listened to that podcast, oh my gosh, I don't think I've ever laughed harder recording. So he's on his 76th marathon this year. He's a third of the way through. It's just hilarious to follow his journey. I get tired looking at that, like the amount of marathons that he's doing with all of his equipment strapped to his back, eating his Oreos. It's so great. I love it so much.
Yeah, he was so refreshing. And also, I think speaking of like fun podcasts that we had like such a laugh on, like Haley Churras, that was definitely our longest podcast. Like Haley can
chatty,
talk,
and I love it.
Yeah, we did not want to stop her though. We were having so much fun on that podcast. That was one that was like 2 hours long that felt like 5 minutes long. So much fun.
I think a common thread is they're all very down to earth, nice people. I think endurance sports have some of the most approachable and wonderful athletes. Like Emma was another, like she was so kind, so humble, but she's like sneaky fierce. Like you watch her and I'm like in awe of her and also like a little afraid of her. Like I pity her competitors because she's got that edge, which is like so cool to watch. And I loved some of our interviews with our like very long distance athletes, like Nathan Fave. Like for me personally, that was a little bit of a dream come true because, you know, I've done a lot of adventure racing and Nathan has been at it for a while and they call him the Michael Jordan of adventure racing. And it's cool to watch someone at sort of the sunset of their career in athletics, just reflecting on it and talking about, you know, I have all these world championships. What does it actually mean? And I think that that's important to reflect on. And then Marianne Hogan, like talk about bringing joy and fun to the sport. Like so many lessons to be learned.
Yeah, she's been really fun to follow recently on Strava. She's been doing some like epic races. She just did Boston Marathon and like had an injury in one of the races, but she always just brings such a like positive attitude to it. She's like, oh, my Achilles blew up on me, but like it happens. I'm here in Costa Rica and having a great time and like smile on, sitting on the beach, like on to the next one. Like she's not burying herself in the sand for 5 days. Like just such a positive attitude and like memory like a goldfish. She's like, what can I do and move along to the next thing? I think that's the thing we're seeing across a lot of the athletes.
Yeah, I know. Like I borrowed that from so Allison's comment of her phrase, do well with what you have right now. Like I've actually used that in a lot of my workouts because you aren't always handed the greatest deck of cards for a workout. And sometimes it's like the lowest workout that you've had and you aren't feeling great about your performance. And I'm like, you know what? Allison has workouts like this too. And this is her phrase. It's gotten me through a few tough ones recently.
And what about those two of our most popular episodes, the Barkley boys back to back?
Yeah, it was so cool to be able to talk to them fresh off their race. And Barkley is such an interesting race. I feel talking to both of them, like you need to think a different way. You need to have a completely different level of focus. You need to be able to do math while on the show. It was so cool.
Would you ever be open to doing Barkley one day?
Like, yeah, probably. I would try it.
You would be. And I want you to do it. I never want to do that. So you can be our local hero who goes and does it. First female to finish it. Let's go.
Oh, so like I do have a history of trail running. And I always tell Mark, I mean, as my coach that, you know, one day I want to return to sort of the ultra running trail distance. That is something I absolutely love, all the things that triathlon brings, but you know, trail running is something that has my heart a little bit. So yeah, Barkley, it wouldn't be something that I would say no to. So maybe.
You're definitely a long distance machine. You love like anything longer than like 10 hours is just like your sweet spot.
I know. It's why I love Ironmans. But so speaking of races, what are your race goals for 2023?
Oh, wow. On the spot here. Well, I think both of us have our mind on the marathon that we've been training. I think it's been like a 20-week block that we've put in that's gone really well. So we're 10 days out from our marathon at this point and really no excuses. Should be hopefully big PBs if we can put it all together. So marathon coming up first soon.
I'm going to interrupt you. Are you going to say what you want to run on the marathon?
Yeah, I feel like I'm somebody who can put it out there and has enough data to support it, but I'm hoping to be under 245, which when we started this block, my goal was sub 250. So had definitely a really good block and made some nice optimizations in terms of when we worked with our natural path, cleaned up a few things diet wise, and some like gut issue stuff that I was having, and has made a huge difference. So exciting to hopefully be going for sub 245 there. What about you? Do you have a target for the marathon that you want to put out there?
I'm not deflecting. I just want to hear first.
Yeah.
What was your last PR?
So
this?
last one was 2019 where I did 257. I had a string of like a bunch of years where I ran like, I think I've run like 257 or 258 like 5 times. So it's time for like a breakthrough, but I'm definitely a very different athlete than I was in 2019 where I had kind of run it off of like triathlon residual fitness. So excited to do like a real marathon block into this one that's gone really well and just get to throw down. Hopefully we get a nice day for it is all I'm hoping for.
I think it's going to be a great day. Okay. I promise I will answer this. So my goal is, I have a stretch goal, but the goal that I really believe is achievable. I want to do a sub 250, which is faster than I've ever done a marathon.
And do you want to share anything about your last marathon that you did?
Oh my gosh. So my last marathon was, I should have known. It was the beginning of 2020. It was the last race that I got to do before everything shut down. So, it was just a standard 2020 experience. I had an injury. We thought it was a stress fracture leading into the marathon. Mark, had, he had just taken over coaching me, and, it was, residual from past training. And all of a sudden I thought that I had a stress fracture. So I did not run for the entire month leading into the marathon. And it was determined that it wasn't a stress fracture. I was cleared to run. And I was going for sub 3 hours. And that was really great, except I had gut issue that day. So right around 35 kilometers, I actually, I shit myself, and I had some really great race photos to prove it. So that was my experience. I didn't get my goal. I was a 304, I believe. And I am just hoping that it's only up from there. I learned a lot about nutrition before the race, and about, better training. A lot of the things that I've built is, consistent training. I was a little bit more sporadic around that time. What I'm really proud of is that there's just been months and months and months of consistent mileage. And we're doing all the other things right, which I'm confident we're going to have really great races. At this point, I'm fully prepared. The only thing that can get in my way is me.
Yeah, we really have no excuse. So we just got to bubble wrap each other for the next 10 days and get to that friggin' start line. So beyond the marathon, what else is on your race schedule for this year?
Well, we both have the half Ironman in Mont Tremblant.
Yeah, we got like 50 people from the club going. That's going to be an LP party weekend. Look out for the sea of blue there.
Yeah, anyone racing, you're going to see us on the course. We'll cheer, clap. And then I have the half Ironman World Championships in Finland, which will be a lot of fun. And I'm going to use that race. Of course, I'm going to race my brains out, but I'm going to use that as a building block for Kona, which is the full Ironman World Championship. I feel like I don't need to explain that to anyone.
I think our audience probably knows what Kona is.
Yeah, so those are the key ones. I don't think I've signed up for anything else.
Nice. Yeah, I'm sure we'll sprinkle in some along the way there. But I feel like Kona sets up nicely for you. Like you don't have a very high sweat rate. You love the heat. Like don't mind wind. I feel like you should have a good day there. I
love racing in the heat. Yeah. And you are right. I don't sweat a lot. And I think that's why I love the Ironman distance, because I feel like it's the dehydration that makes people slow down. Yes. And I don't get as dehydrated. Now I do get dehydrated, but just not at the same level. Not the same level as me, who ends up in the med tent every time, whether I nail my fueling or not, what it seems like. You drink so much and you lose like 15 pounds, not quite, but it just like, it's over the course of a race that you definitely need to take in a lot more fluids in order to stay competitive. Yeah. Even Florida, where it was a cool day and I like nailed everything. I finished the race and I'm like, I feel totally fine. Here it comes. I know. Just vomiting my guts out. The worst. So what have you done about that?
Well, I feel like I've also changed a lot as an athlete in terms of my like composition and stuff over the last little while. Like I'm definitely leaner than I was before. I think I'm definitely more efficient than I was before. And also I think I'm just like a lot more well informed when it comes to like sodium, hydration, carbs, like all those things I can take in way higher levels without having GI distress as well. So I think I've optimized, and just as a coach like over the last number of years have developed so much from them that I've learned so much about that. So I guess my only different race than yours is Maryland, which is a couple weeks before Kona, which I'm set up very smart so I can go party in Kona and enjoy the women's race and party while I'm there. But yeah, I'm very excited for Maryland, especially after seeing our friend Allison last weekend, who
Yes.
in Texas just threw down and set the tone for us, our training buddy.
I know it's so fun to be able to have strong training partners. I think that we saw that across all of the podcasts that we've done is a lot of people train with other people. And I think I posted on my Instagram recently, like if you want to be a lion, train with lions. And I think we've been so lucky to have like some epic athletes to train with. And then like epic athletes to learn from. And I think that we've pulled a lot of like key themes from the first 19 episodes. So like what are some of the key themes that you've seen over and over and over from these athletes?
Oh my goodness. Like eating enough might be the biggest theme that I think I've seen across all of them. Like everybody is, it seems, has struggled with some sort of energy deficiency at one point, whether it's been on the extreme range of things or just something that eventually like forced them to get injured or their performance to stagnate or even decline. So I think just the amount needed to sustain, we're looking mostly at like long endurance athletes, like the amount you need to sustain is just like so crazy. And people are typically under fueling if they're doing anything in terms of training, decent training hours.
Yeah, it's true. And I find that it's like one of the watchouts because it's so it's not traditionally overly healthy to be micromanaging what you're eating. I find that as like athletes that are doing endurance sports, keeping an eye on approximately what you're taking in is really important. We don't track it because that's just, I mean, I think a general rules, if you can eat more, do. But like you've done a lot of work in the time that I've known you to make sure, I mean, you've always eaten a lot, but you've definitely changed the composition of what you've eaten. Like working with, you mentioned the naturopath earlier, like you've had some huge things that you've changed this year and we've seen it in your sports.
Yeah, through that natural path, like you do this essentially poop test that you get you to do, as well as some blood work.
There's a lot of poop talk in this
Yeah,
podcast.
sorry,
They'll never
guys.
want us back.
Yeah. Hey, it's a real talk here. But yeah, I did this. I got a bunch of like results back in terms of like general health stuff. So I found out I had like my body really hated gluten. Like I wasn't totally celiac, but my body really hated it. So I've been cutting out that for a long time. And I think my other issue was that I had no good gut bacteria. So between those two, a number of pills, adjusting the diet a little bit, instantly I like shed a little bit of like poofiness. I lost a fair amount of weight, but my energy has been great as well. And then like my results have spoken for themselves. I've had like my best like running results. My bike FTP is as high as it's ever been. My swimming is like great right now. So it's hard to say if like I just figured some pieces out from training or if it's been that, but like I don't think I can not say that contributes to it.
I know, but what I love about the approach that you took, like number one, it's really hard to figure out carbs with gluten-free when you haven't done it, but we figured it out with like rice, sweet potatoes, and there's like lots of good gluten-free treats. But you took it on by actually doing the testing. Like one of the things that I think you can fall into is just following what the pros are doing, or like we had the conversation with some athletes about, fat adaptation. Just because it works for someone doesn't mean it's going to work for you. And I think what we did really well was work with someone to actually get, I did some like blood testing and urine testing to actually get, where I am nutritionally. And I know that that's been a theme too, is doing that blood testing to go underneath the hood to see where are your deficiencies and what is a custom plan for you.
Custom, I think, is the key part. Is like we were telling our naturopath, the key was that we have these crazy high training demands in the amount of hours we're doing, and we can't just go on a regular like cleanse that somebody like maybe not without those demands could do. So having that lens on it, I think, is uber important as well.
Yeah, like it's interesting. And one of the things that you tell your athletes over and over again is there's almost unlearning that needs to happen when you're an endurance athlete in terms of nutrition, because it's almost like the things that you need to eat are completely opposite of what a normal and I would say healthy diet is.
Yeah.
And actually, and not to spoil it, but we will be talking, we're going to do a little something a little different next week as well. And we're going to bring on an endurance expert. And we are going to talk about sports nutrition because I think it's so important. And that's, I think, one of the outstanding themes that we've seen across the board, no matter what sport, if you're not fueling the engine, and most people are under eating in the sport, and it's actually hard to overeat. And then and not to like beat this to death, but like making sure it's nutritionally dense as well.
Yep. All good points. What other themes have you seen there in some of the episodes that keep coming out?
Well, so my dad listens to the podcast. Shout out to John Kipfer. He just celebrated 60 years of life. And you know, he was being a typical dad, and he does love the podcast. And what he was exclaiming about was some of the themes. And I think his favorite was fun and, a positive attitude. Throughout all of our athletes that we've talked to, they're in this sport because they love it. And we were talking about like Marianne's reaction to Boston. And, she could have been like frustrated, angry. She could have tied her self-worth to it, but she didn't. She was so positive. And you had said that whole phrase of like memory of a goldfish. And I think there's a lot of athletes we talk to who have that memory of a goldfish and just focus on the positive and have so much fun in this sport.
Yeah, I think a lot of them do have these mental health struggles in there, but I think a lot of them have come a long way. I think we've talked to a lot of like very seasoned athletes in here who have really figured that out over time, that like, hey, I'm doing a sport that is hard. I need to wake up every day and train for X amount of hours per day, day after day. Like, it is hard. And if you're not having fun with it, like, man, you can go down the drain pretty quickly on it.
It's true. And I think another key theme that we have talked about is sleep. Like you see that in almost every person where we talk about like, what's your keys to success? They'll always throw in sleep. And I think like food and sleep are like two of the very top. And so just where most people are probably not eating enough, you're probably not sleeping enough. Like I don't use Whoop regularly anymore, but I think that was one of the biggest surprises I had when I used it was, okay, I used to think that I'm in bed for 8 hours, so I'm getting 8 hours of sleep. That's not the case. You might be getting 7. So to get your hours, you need longer time in bed than you probably think you do.
Yeah, it's not for me not trying. I'm like, let's go to bed. Come on. Like, I'm closing my eyes. We're 8 hours out from waking up when my alarm is. Don't talk to me.
Oh, I know, but I always have so many things to tell you.
Tell me on the bike the next day.
Fair. And the other thing, like we talked about, customizing. So, that blood testing piece, a lot of athletes do that at the highest level. And I think not looking at what other people are doing, but focusing on the program that is right for you. And that goes through nutrition. So blood testing, but then also in the training, they're not copying each other. They're learning from each other. But at the end of the day, they're focusing on what's right for them.
Yeah, every athlete I found had a different like training philosophy in terms of the amount of volume they did, the frequency they did of stuff. Yeah, like Tamara Jewett is one of the best in the sport, who somebody must be like, oh, she's probably logging these crazy Ks. She's like, I run 3 days a week. That's what works for me. And I do tons of training in the other sports, and that supports me and keeps me away from injury. Like, so cool to see how everybody is bringing a different dynamic to it and is finding exactly what works for them versus following.
I know Rach is out there gravel riding. Like they all have a formula. And I think that these themes tie together. Like fun is a big part of it. Doing things that in their training that makes it fun, because they are doing so many hours. I mean, everyone's doing so many hours. So there's so many great things that you can borrow from these themes.
Yeah. It's also cool. Like within that, the fact that they're doing so many hours is, I think a lot of times pro triathlete life is maybe people think it's just this like hard grind and these like max effort workouts, but it's really this like playing the long game and not like being a hero day in, day out has been another one I've definitely seen a bunch. Like Cody just talked about it in the last episode of just, I'm always leaving it at a 9 out of 10 because I only have 5 to 6 days a year where I can go to like that max effort. And I'm a huge proponent of that. I only have a couple times where I'm going to bring out my alter ego Marchie in a couple races and let him loose. And he only comes out so often, but those are special days. And I reserve those for very key days. So that's another one I've noticed a lot.
So talk to us about your alter ego. Like, when does he come out? What is he like?
Yeah. Just A races. He's pretty much like one of those horses that has the blinders on. So like when I'm in maybe not as serious of a race, I'll see like my fellow athletes that like I coach and stuff, and I'll give them a wave, but they're like, you look possessed when you're out there and like your A races and you're digging deep on the back half of the race. Like it's kind of scary, man. It's like, well,
yeah. So if you see Mark on a race and he looks a little scary, just don't take it personally. Just say hi to him after.
Means it's probably an A race and I'm going hard. Like,
so how do you have fun in your training?
Well, the nice thing is my training is also my job now. And I enjoy this enough that I pushed hard to make it my every single day. So it's, man, I've just always loved being around sport and helping people like solve the problem of getting better. So my training doesn't really feel like any sort of work. It's just like play. And yeah, sport's always been a part of my life, like from soccer to hockey to golf to cross country to track and field. It's always been a part of my life. So now I get to make it like pretty much my entire life now. So it doesn't feel like a stressor or something that's hard to me. It's just fun to go out there every day and be a guinea pig for different training stuff and nutrition and stuff like that. So yeah, easy on my end. What about you?
Honestly, for me, it's people. Like, that's been the most fun for me because I do work an obscene amount of hours every single week. So I find that my training time is also my social time. So being able to go out there and have conversations, sometimes if it's a stressful day at work, that's where I, breathe deeply, sort of shake off the day. I have the luxury of having a morning workout and an evening workout. So often I can bookend my day, and it's just so nice to be able to do that. And for me, it's the people that make it fun. Yeah, sometimes I'm laughing so hard I can hardly run. That's amazing. And I find that just surrounding yourself with a community of people who are like-minded, but that are just like almost insanely positive. It sort of shows you another way. And it just makes you a more positive person. I find that it actually is the people that makes this all fun. And it comes down to community. Like, that's why we're doing this, is that, we love this sport. We love the people. And I think that, making a community, there's so many great people in endurance. So
yeah, I think you got to have the right values in your community though, too. Like, I feel like I've bounced around a lot of clubs in the past, but it's like, it's fun to make like your own niche one that it's like, okay, like we're not going to deal with negativity here. Like, bring positive vibes. Like, we're performance driven here, but like, come have some fun and you're going to get better if you learn and stick to the process and learn from the people around you and just be positive. Like, we have so many awesome positive people, which I definitely appreciate, and so many positive people we've interviewed on this too. Like, I love that.
I think it comes down to like just creating a culture that is so strong that it ejects anything that doesn't fit. And I think actually like that's a good segue to something else we wanted to talk about today, which is a big topic in the news this week, which is the doping drama.
Yeah, Colin Chartier been popped for using EPO. So big news, making waves in the triathlon world.
It is making huge waves. And it's, when you talk about building that culture, it's like, I think that we were talking a little bit about like, what is our way forward from here? Like we can sit here and be disappointed and sad and outraged and all the emotions that we have witnessed across all of the pros and all of the people who just support the sport. But I think I'm always looking at like, okay, so what's next? How do we make sure that the culture of triathlon is so strong around the integrity of upholding clean sport that we eject this and we don't have this happen again? But for anyone who hasn't heard the story, like, just talk to us a little bit about like what happened.
Yeah, I think a good one for people to listen to is the How They Train podcast. So
Very good podcast.
He had Colin Chartier on there to give his what they're calling like the full scoop on it. But even the How They Train host Jack Kelly has been on some other podcasts and said like, I asked all the questions I could and Colin gave me whatever answers he could, but it seems like there might be some holes in the story or some things he may have to withhold for legal reasons and stuff like that. So essentially he admitted that he used EPO because he was in a dark spot in his training, coming off of, he won 2 very big races last year. Like maybe Mont Tremblant isn't a huge one, but he finished like top 10 at PTO Canadian Open. And then his big one of the year was winning the PTO US Open, which was $100,000 race.
Are you getting emotional over there? Go take a drink. I can talk. Don't worry. And so when I think about this, it makes everyone pause. And I think I screenshotted the Sebastian Keenley comment. Like, I love Sebastian. I mean, we named our golden retriever after Sebastian. He's an incredible athlete. We are big fans. And his comment of, he basically called all of the pieces of the story that were shared on the podcast of, let me guess, you researched it alone, you ordered it online alone, like no one had any influence. And that essentially was the story. And the fact that we're able to predict that, and it's so similar to past stories, I just think that when someone is willing to lie or cheat, no matter what he says, and I do in a way, he's in such a difficult spot because no one is going to believe what he says because his integrity is called into question in general.
Yeah, he's definitely, it's hard to believe anything he says at this point, whether he told the whole story or not, or if it's going to continue to spill over. But man, he clearly made some serious waves with some of the pros there. You saw Lionel's video, Luke McKenzie, like grown men literally like weeping on camera. Like this clearly had a massive impact on some of the people. And maybe this has been happening for a while, and that was the first bit that like has really made waves in it. Like, yeah.
Well, I think what it shows and what makes me like love this sport is there's so much passion in the sport and people who care so deeply, and the fact that they're so affected, like they're almost like keepers of the sport, you know, and they have been these pillars and these icons. And I think it just calls into question, makes them feel like it's futile. Like, I think that there's a few, like, I think it was Cody Beals actually who made some comments of like, why it makes me question. Well, there's been a lot of pros that say it makes me question why I'm doing this. And I feel for them because there's so many of the high level professional triathletes. And I believe this with all my heart, who are competing. They're competing clean. They're putting in the hours and hours of work. And I think like anyone who's done an Ironman or an endurance event knows that it's like, it sometimes takes your soul. Like you are putting everything into it. And you're doing it honestly, so that if someone is taking shortcuts, it almost diminishes the work that you're putting into it. And it just calls into the question, like sort of why am I putting so much time in if there is shortcuts?
Yeah. Imagine doing 30 hours a week, and how, when a story like this comes out, how do you not have that in your head as you're training? Like, how many of these like results have I seen? How many start lines have I been on? And like, yeah, that's got to be tough on the motivation side to just keep getting out there every day and thinking like, yeah, people are taking shortcuts. And yeah, I feel like it kind of calls into question like the sport as a whole. Like, how many other ones out there are not legit too and have just got around the system? Like triathlon's notoriously not super great at testing, especially out of competition. Like they're usually pretty decent from what I've seen, and a bunch of the pros posts at like testing in competition, especially if you like land on the podium at an Ironman race and stuff like that. But it's been very cool watching a bunch of the pros post up their lists of all the
I saw Emma do that.
That Justin Metzler just did it too. A bunch of them posted up like when they've gotten tested in the last while. And I heard a wild one the other day. Like you have that like whereabouts thing that you need to like essentially give a like time that they can go to your house to do random testing like out of competition. and like a bunch of people, like I heard Sam Long wasn't even on that like whereabouts list anymore, like one of the top triathletes in the world. Like you know there's going to be a testing problem when like the top guys aren't even going to be on a whereabouts list like that and might not even get tested out of competition. Like, yeah, that's tough.
I think if anything, it's just going to add a lot more rigor to the testing. Like now triathlon, like governing bodies that be will start realizing, oh, we need to take this more seriously. But I think another outcome of this that makes me sad, and you see this, is that this questioning of competitors. Like I think even at the pro level, this whole idea of not being able to trust your fellow competitors. And that's sad because you watch so many pros have incredible relationships with each other. And that's built on you like mutual trust, mutual respect. And the fact that that's being called into question, I think like is harming the structure of the sport.
Yeah, people had like very nice things to say about Colin as a person. So I think that might have been one of the reason why it was such waves. If it was just this person who nobody really liked or was hiding out, then maybe it wouldn't have been as big of an issue. But I think it really blindsided people on this.
Well, because they all liked him. And they spent time with him. They trained with him. He was their friend. They trusted him. And I think when something like that happens, it calls into question all of the other relationships, even if they're clean. But I think the one thing that I will say about Colin that while there's no way that I am defending anything that he is doing, I think that the reaction and response is completely appropriate. But I often reflect on, we are so much more than the worst thing that we've ever done. And I hope that this is going to make a positive difference. I think a really important conversation that's coming out of this, and Lionel actually brought it up, is, one of the pillars that Colin was standing on is that he wasn't feeling like he could win. And I think like triathlon's having an existential crisis of like, why do we do this? Because if the point is winning, there's so few people that can win. So what is the point of triathlon? And I loved Lionel's sort of reason why, but like, why do you do triathlon?
Because I like a challenge of trying to like put the puzzle piece together of continually getting better. And yeah, it is like a social thing for me as well. It's a spot where I can bond with people over something I enjoy who come from a bunch of different spots. So like, yeah, I haven't won crap in my life. Like I'm definitely not doing it for winning here.
Yet,
like
maybe you will.
Hey, you won an Ironman. Like I have nothing to my name here other than athletes that have won Ironman, I guess.
It's true. I think it's so true. And I think the whole idea of the reason I do it is there's so few like very pure ways that you can fully test your limits in the world. And I like the fairness of it. It's just very eloquent to be out there and either you have a good day or you have a bad day. And even the themes that we were talking about today, like triathlon or endurance sport in general, is this sort of like very physical version of living out some of the rules and principles around life. And I just think it makes you a better human to go out and really push your limits and be willing to put it on the line. Like even the point of like sharing, you shared your marathon goal, you've put in all the work to get there, but there's a possibility, it might not be a big one, but there's a possibility that you might not get that. But that's not the point, and I think that that's so important. The other thing that we talked about too is this whole theme around mental health. And I think that if you don't have a really strong why, and you aren't balancing it with, proper mental health and support, you can get to a really dark place. And I know that that's been sort of an underlying story with Colin as well, is that, maybe he felt like he didn't have another option. I know that, if you have poor mental health, it can be very, very dark, especially if you don't feel like you have the support.
Yeah, I just really hope once he put that out that he got the heck off social media, because that would not help your mental health at all. Like Ben Hoffman actually put it well in that, like, I think there is a key part of this that needs to happen, which is that like social media anger that's going around and people putting stuff out there. I think that shows the impact of it and like actually makes waves and maybe helps to make things better and happen. And it's also spreading the story of it. Maybe it can become an outlet to make positive change in this. So it's a super important part. But yeah, there's definitely still a human behind this, and hopefully he just gets the heck off social media. And like they said on some other podcasts, he just goes to Bali or something and hides out for a while because there's probably nothing positive from
No.
going on social media. People are just like angry right now, and maybe it was good he just gave them an outlet to rip away on it. And while we look to make positive change on it, but holy waves.
I know. And I hope that, like, when you talk about positive change, if there is an athlete that is using EPO or a performance enhancing drug, that this, because I know once you start using and it's maybe being administered and people all around you are using it, or so you think, it can be so easy to justify it and think that it's okay. And this might be an important reminder to maybe stop using it, maybe. So maybe that will help. But just back to the mental health thing, I think we, as endurance athletes, you spend a lot of time alone. So it can be normalized if you're going to be isolating yourself. And I think that that's the importance of community in general. And I think it's a part of it's why we're building Endurance Icons, to build out, a community of people that are there to support, place to learn, resources, and, people that you can look up to and learn from. So thanks for, this podcast episode was a bit of a wild ride. It was very random. We hope you liked it. Let us know if you didn't. We, follow sort of what you are looking for. And we're going to be testing and trying different things in the coming episodes. We're always going to have the awesome icons on the show. But we want to keep adding resources and ideas and people who can give expert opinions. And every once in a while, we'll pop in and share, how our training is going and some of the key news topics. So stay tuned for that. Anything you want to add?
No, just let us know if you want us to cover off any other topics, or if there's other guests you want to see. Just give us a comment on YouTube or send us a message through social media. We're always open to getting people on, and people have been pretty receptive to coming on. And if you ever got questions you want us to ask people, fire away.
I know.
We're at your becking call here.
Well, we're just over here having a blast. This is so much fun for us. We do this, just as much for ourselves. Truly, I would do this even if no one listened. It's such a fun way. I learn so much from this. So thank you so much for listening to this episode. We can't wait to introduce you to some special topics next week. And then we'll be back with some endurance icons. But thank you for listening and happy training. We'll see you next week. Wow. How great was that? I always learn so much from these endurance icons. If you enjoyed the podcast as well, please consider liking us across social media, subscribing to us on YouTube, or giving us a 5-star rating on wherever you listen to your podcasts. We appreciate you and your support so much. We wish you happy training, and we'll see you back next week.